community chest have 16 cards. 2 of the 16 community chest cards will move a player, 1 to go and 1 to jail, while 10 of the 16 chance cards will move a player. You don't need a Vegas card counting level of tabs on which cards have been selected so far. However, you can keep track of which cards have been drawn, such as Boardwalk, Illinois Avenue, or St. Charles.
I feel like I've watched this video before, but then again, there's a surprising amount of how to win at Monopoly videos somehow. Maybe I shouldn't say somehow. The game is popular. It's capitalism, the game.
From go, without being sent to any spots on the board, it takes 5 average rolls of the dice to make it to the 4th row. This also assumes you don't land on the go to jail spot, which forms a natural barrier. This means players will be more likely to land on spots such as the light blue or orange property sets. This is fairly common knowledge among any moderately skilled player. Therefore, it might be easier and cheaper to play defense and block these monopolies from being developed rather than try to acquire them for yourself. The process of carrying this out will be discussed later in the video. To win a game, you will need a monopoly, but first, it is critical to understand how you will use your monopoly. Let's take for example the red property set. Each house here costs $150. So to build one house on each property, it will cost $450 with a rent of $90.
70 is like the max level. If I can increase the cap to at least be level 80, I think that would be a very huge advantage for me.
Rent $250, and we'll need 4 people.
I'm not sure how the other dragons scale, and maybe I should beat them, because apparently you can beat them out of order, I think.
Rent $700, and you need just 2 people to land on your red properties in order to break even. This return on investment is the first key, the second key being the money supply. Assuming you are playing a typical game with no free parking cash, the money supply will begin to dwindle as the money has largely been transferred to properties. This means big blows to a player with a 3-house rent payment and can significantly transfer the balance of the money supply and the balance of power in the game. After 3 houses, the return on investment isn't as great. 4 houses or hotels should only be built as kill shots in order to bankrupt the player or if you have excess cash. When building houses, it is critical to view houses as a permanent investment. Selling houses only returns 50% of the price, making that a sunken cost. Unlike a mortgage property that can be rebuilt at the mortgage rate with a 10% fee. When building houses, always mortgage a property instead of selling a house. Having houses is the key to winning the game, and railroads and utilities should only be viewed as passive income. Now that we have established the key fundamentals, it's time to win the game. This is done through negotiating and defense. The key to defense is defending against the hotspots, most notably light blue and orange. Depending on the game, the reds, pinks, or yellows might require attention too. The key is to trade to weak players who might hold the 3rd property to a monopoly. This allows you to control the tempo. Often, a player will be more likely to trade with you, knowing that you don't have a monopoly when your opponent does. If a game becomes extremely defensive, then owning the railroads or utilities can be beneficial if done early on. Almost every game will require a trade. The key is realizing how much money it takes to develop 3 houses. Row 1 and Row 4 have monopoly sets of 2 with brown and dark blue. Each other monopoly requires 9 houses to form 3 houses on each property, 7 houses to get 3 houses on just 1.
Well, if it did show up
understanding these values
in the dragon room, that would have been very annoying.
You can flip a game into your favor without your opponents even realizing it, regardless of your luck. Let's take a scenario where you and your opponent both have $600. You own 1 light blue, 1 orange, and 2 pinks, while your opponent owns 2 oranges, 2 light blues, and a pink. By all measures, your opponent is winning, as the orange and light blue monopolies are superior to the pink. So, on your turn, you offer this deal. Oriental, St. James, or States, $400. The board will erupt in anger, as they believe you just handed your opponent the game. And your opponent thinks he's just locked up the win, as now he owns the 2 best monopolies and gave up peanuts.
One more cry, baby.
$2,000, you build 10 houses on the Kings immediately, getting you $450 to $700 each time someone lands on the properties. Your opponent, with $200, can only build 2 houses on orange or 4 houses on light blue, and make no more than $100 by someone landing on it. Knowing your position and opponent's position on the board, you may be able to quickly get a few rent collections before anybody realizes what's just happened. Before your opponent realizes that his only option is to mortgage the oranges that he's been after the entire game to build more on light blue, you've already collected rent and have drastically shifted the money supply in your favor. Now this won't work if your opponent has properties to mortgage, because they can simply mortgage them and build houses right away. This example is meant to be questionable, to demonstrate that you can still hijack a game even when your opponents don't feel like trading with you. In a real game, you should be able to get far more favorable deals, and the possibilities for deals are countless. The key is to understand how much money both you and your opponent have for developing, and to trick them into thinking they just got a great deal. Knowing you can reach 3 houses when they can't will allow you to take the lion's share of the money supply of the game.
Okay, why is that even an option?
Monopoly comes down to understanding the odds of the dice and know where you or your opponent may land next turn. Then, knowing the board to further anticipate hotspots and likelihood of players being in any part of the board at any given time. Then, leveraging houses to deal critical blows to your opponents while building your own wealth.
I need more defense than I do offense.
And then executing a trade which allows you to build houses your opponent can't. So guys, those are the tools in order to win any game of Monopoly. There are more strategies that weren't able to fit into the runtime of this video. If you'd like me to make a second video on advanced tactics, please mention it in the comments. Here at Moneymakers, our videos discuss all.
Rather than chasing Pac-Man the entire duration of the level, they will sometimes run away during scatter mode. The amount of time the ghosts spend in scatter and chase mode depend on which level the player is currently on. In general, the ghosts start in scatter mode and alternate between this and chase mode 4 times per level. This pattern gives the player a breather for a moment every once in a while when the ghosts aren't right on Pac-Man's tail. Other than the very first level, the 3rd chase sequence is very long, while the 4th scatter sequence is only a single frame, essentially eliminating it. After the last scatter sequence, the ghosts are stuck in chase mode. The timer that controls these phases is reset when the level is cleared and when Pac-Man dies. Blinky has special cases which will allow him to act like he is in chase mode when he is actually in scatter mode when there are few dots left in the maze. This starts to happen on the first level when there are 20 dots remaining, and this increases as the level number increases. During the scatter and chase states, the ghosts use a targeting system to determine which direction to travel. As soon as they step onto a new tile, they will immediately figure out the next best tile to move into from this point. The decision is between 3 new tiles, the one directly in front of it, 90 degrees clockwise, or 90 degrees counterclockwise. Notice that at this point, turning around backwards 180 degrees is not an option. This means that a ghost cannot normally turn around while cruising around.
It won't make a difference for
As you'll
these
see later,
characters.
it is possible in certain circumstances, but for now, let's ignore that. Directions that would make a ghost travel into a solid tile are also removed from consideration. Of the remaining options to choose from, the one that is the closest to the target tile linearly is the tile the ghost will start moving to. If 2 or more tiles are the same distance from the target tile, the tile directly up on the screen is given the highest priority, then left and down. This algorithm is used for every tile movement, not just at the intersections of the maze. Because solid tiles are ignored, and ghosts can't turn around backwards, once one enters a section of the maze, they will travel all the way through it to the next intersection. As another example, suppose a ghost were traveling downwards into this tile, and this tile up here was the target. While moving down is already out of the question since that's a wall, and he can't turn around and go back up. Between going left and right, right minimizes the distance towards the target. Similarly, traveling into this tile from the right side results in choosing between left and up. Going up would be the decision made here to reduce the distance. If the ghost were traveling from the left side, the distances between going up and right to the target are the same. However, up is given priority over right, so the ghost would go up. With the targeting system down pat, let's look into how the ghosts handle their respective states. During scatter mode, each ghost targets one specific tile in the maze. This target never changes during the scatter state. The 4 targets are in the 4 corners of the maze, causing each ghost to flop to a different area of the map. Blinky goes to the top right, Pinky to the top left, Inky to the bottom right, and Clyde to the bottom left. Most of the time, the scatter phase is so short that they don't stick around in the corners for too long, but if they could, they would continue running around in circles near their respective target tiles. We can simulate this by placing tons of ghosts throughout the entire maze, and see how eventually they all bunch up in their respective corners. Blinky would always end up going in a clockwise cycle, Inky in a counterclockwise cycle. Inky and Clyde can get stuck going in either direction, depending on what area of the map they arrive from. Let's leave Chase mode for last, and look at Frightened mode first. All 4 ghosts will enter Frightened mode simultaneously when Pac-Man eats a power pellet on levels 1 through 16 and 18. They will turn blue, and Pac-Man can touch them for points and send them back to the ghost house. Upon touching the power pellet, the ghosts will also all turn around 180 degrees, regardless of if they entered Frightened mode or not. This is one of the exceptions to the turnaround rule. When in Frightened mode, instead of minimizing distance to a target tile, they will just pick an eligible direction at random, using the output from a random number generator. If Pac-Man does touch a frightened ghost, they will go into Eating mode. At this point, they will turn into a blank set of eyeballs and scurry back to the ghost house before pursuing again. This is done by forcing the ghost's target tile to be right in front of the gate. Once they reach it, they move down to go inside and revert to scatter or chase mode. And finally, we will look at chase mode. When all the ghosts enter chase mode, they will all turn around at 180 degrees, just like entering frightened mode. They also turn around when leaving chase mode and entering scatter mode. These are the other 2 exceptions to the turnaround rule, and you can use this to easily tell when a mode switch occurs. Unlike scatter mode, where the target tile is constant, in chase mode, a new target tile is calculated every time before a decision to move is made. Each ghost has a unique way of determining this active target tile, which is what ultimately leads to the ghost's unique habits. Blinky has the simplest way of determining a target tile. It is simply just the tile where Pac-Man is located. Knowing this, if we plop Blinky and Pac-Man anywhere in the maze, we can trace out the path that Blinky will take. Because the target tile is directly on top of Pac-Man, Blinky will pretty much always find his way to Pac-Man one way or another. There are a few exceptions, which we'll look at more later. Pinky has the next simplest way to figure out her target tile, but it comes with a twist. The tile Pinky targets is the tile 4 tiles in front of Pac-Man. So, 4 tiles to the left if he's facing left, 4 below when facing down, or 4 to the right when facing right. But when Pac-Man is facing up, the target tile is 4 tiles above and 4 tiles to the left. Let's go off on a tangent for a moment to look at why this happens. So, the tile positions of Pac-Man and the ghosts are stored as 2 bytes next to each other. The first byte is the horizontal position, starting from way off the right side of the screen, counting up leftwards. The right side of the screen is X position hex 20, and the left is hex 3B. The second byte is the vertical position, starting from way off the top of the screen, going down. The first row of the maze is Y position hex 21, and the bottom is hex 3F. The game stores directions as unit vectors in this format as well. So left is the pair 1, 0, horizontally positive 1, vertically 0. Right would then be the pair hex FF 0, horizontally negative 1, vertically 0. Down and up would be 0, 1, and 0 hex FF respectively. These unit vectors can be multiplied by a constant and added together to get an arbitrary two-dimensional vector. For example, to get 4 to the right, we take the vector hex FF0 and multiply it by 4 to get hex 3FC 0. The positions are only 8-bit
How did I
values,
survive
so
the
the
first
carried
time
3
this
is
happened?
discarded, and we get hex
How did no one die?
FC0, which corresponds to negative 4 of 0. But what causes the up vector to be incorrect? If we multiply 0 hex FF by 4, we get 0 hex 3FC, which should be truncated to 0 hex FC, just like the right vector. The problem is that although these are 8-bit values, the code that handles this calculation treats the entire vector as one 16-bit value instead of two 8-bit ones. So instead of the 3 being discarded, it overflows into the x component of the vector. The result is instead 3 hex FC, which corresponds to 3 negative 4. This overflow error occurs one more time when the vector is added to the position of the object of interest, or Pac-Man in this case. The carried 1 from adding hex FC gets added to the x component in addition to the 3 that is already present. This results in the final offset being 4 up and 4 to the left, instead of the expected 4 directly up. This error doesn't occur in the right direction, since any overflow x coordinate does get discarded, since it is in the upper half of the 16-bit value. Because the two 8-bit components of the vector are treated as one 16-bit value, anytime negative 1 is added to the vertical component, 1 is also added to the horizontal component. Anyway, with that anomaly understood, let's look back at Pinky's target tile. We can do the same thing as we did with Blinky and trace out any path she will take if we know where Pac-Man is. Because the tile is slightly in front of Pac-Man, Pinky tends to catch Pac-Man from the front as Blinky chases from behind. Also, since the tile isn't directly on top of Pac-Man, it is easily possible that Pinky won't ever actually reach Pac-Man if he sits in certain places. This is even easier to do when Pac-Man faces up, since the target tile is fairly disjoint with this position. Inky has an interesting target tile calculation, mainly because it is not only dependent on Pac-Man's position, but also Blinky's current position as well. First, an intermediate tile is found, which is 2 tiles in front of Pac-Man. Again, just like with Pinky, if Pac-Man is facing up, the tile is 2 in front and 2 to the left instead. Then, the vector from this tile to Blinky's position is rotated 180 degrees on its end. This is Inky's target tile. This peculiar method of targeting results in Inky working with Blinky to flank Pac-Man when the two of them are far apart. But if Blinky is right on Pac-Man's tail, Inky will come in close too. These paths assume Pac-Man stays stationary, which isn't normally the case, and also assumes that Blinky stays stationary, which definitely isn't
pretty
true.
weak to
Therefore, it's relatively
ailments.
difficult to predict Inky's movement due to the secondary dependence on Pac-Man's position. Then there's Clyde. With a name that sticks out from the others, you just know that he's the odd one out. Clyde's target tile is identical to Blinky's, which is directly on top of where Pac-Man is currently located. However, this is only the case when Clyde is 8 or more tiles away from Pac-Man. If he's less than 8 tiles away, the target tile he chooses is the same one as in scatter mode. This means there are actually few spots where Pac-Man can idle and Clyde will catch him. Most of these spots are down in the bottom left corner near Clyde's scatter target, but there are a couple other areas in the maze that have long tunnels without escape routes to the bottom left, where Clyde has no choice but to run into Pac-Man. Now, earlier I said that Blinky will usually always find Pac-Man, but there's actually an exception to this thanks to some special cases. There are 2 areas of the maze where ghosts in scatter or chase mode will not attempt to update what direction they're facing. That is, they cannot turn at an intersection. One area is right at the exit of the ghost house, and the other is right where Pac-Man starts in the maze. This effectively means that the ghosts cannot turn up at these 4 intersections. Because of this, there is at least one tile where Pac-Man can hide forever and pretty much never get caught. In the case of Blinky, suppose he is right here traveling upward. He goes left, but then is forced to continue moving left until this intersection where he goes down. He goes right and up at the bottom of the maze, and now he's completed the cycle, which means he will be stuck in this loop until Pac-Man moves. Blinky can get stuck here going clockwise or counterclockwise. Pinky can also get stuck here going clockwise only, or she'll get stuck circling the ghost house in either direction. Clyde will also get stuck in one of 2 cycles nearby as well. Pinky is difficult to track down here because his movement depends on where Blinky is in his pattern, but generally he gets stuck cycling around the ghost house or one of these T-shaped walls. Pinky's target tile ends up moving around in a cycle due to Blinky moving around in a cycle pattern himself. The number of tiles it takes for Blinky to run around this T-shaped wall is equal to the number of tiles it takes for Inky to run around another T-shaped wall, as well as the ghost house. Therefore, once Inky falls into a cycle around one of these things, he's stuck there indefinitely. Pac-Man will never get caught once the ghosts all fall into their endless cycles, but that doesn't mean it's incredibly easy to get into this position. Just entering this tile facing up doesn't grant invincibility, since Blinky can still easily find Pac-Man from about half of the positions on the map. Luckily, Blinky doesn't travel on much of this part of the map on his own, since he is usually near the top right during scatter mode, and somewhere near Pac-Man during chase mode. Pinky and Clyde can really only find Pac-Man when they are near the bottom right of the maze. The easiest way to trigger the safe spot is to lure the ghosts into the bottom left and enter from the bottom intersection. Inky is the ghost that you'll need to look out for the most, since it can take much longer for him to get caught up in a cycle somewhere. This hiding spot isn't the only way to take advantage of the ghost's behavior, but it is the most silly. There are many smaller and more practical ways to use this knowledge of the movement algorithm to avoid the ghosts during gameplay. Just understanding how the ghosts greedily minimize distance between them and their target tile is a good start. For example, when in the bottom tunnels, Blinky and Pinky will go up or inward to get closer to Pac-Man, even though neither of these directions are the best way to reach him. This leaves the rest of the tunnel empty thanks to this U-shaped bend. Pinky's offset targeting can be abused by turning around quickly after passing through an intersection. If Pinky is within 4 tiles of Pac-Man, and Pac-Man turns around right as Pinky enters the intersection tile, the target tile will be behind the intersection, making Pinky make a 90-degree turn one way or the other, since continuing straight forward would increase the distance between the two. This works even better being chased downward because of the left offset bug. This bug also leads to other ways of tricking Pinky, such as idling in this position in the maze. The target tile is across and against a completely different wall to the one Pac-Man is touching, so Pinky will want to go up left instead of down right. You may be wondering if these types of strategies are used in order to play perfect games, where the maximum score possible is achieved. The answer is yes, but more likely the movement is just memorized. See, since all of the ghosts' movement patterns are ultimately based on Pac-Man's movement, and therefore the player's input, a consistent movement pattern of Pac-Man will result in the exact same ghost movement every time. The only thing to fight against, then, is the random number generator output when the ghosts are in Fright Mode. But after level 19, the ghosts don't even enter Fright Mode. At this point, you only have to memorize exactly where the ghost will move, given that you control Pac-Man the exact same way each time you level. Before ending the video, I'd like to share one final animation showing off the ghost's target tiles and projected travel paths during gameplay. I think it's just fun to sit and watch, and think about how some fairly simple math results in such a great game experience. Thank you for watching. If you are new to the channel and/or haven't seen the video explaining the kill screen in Pac-Man, be sure to check it out. Maybe after mastering the Ghost's movement patterns, you'll be able to make it to that level yourself.
Oh fuck. Maybe I should just lower the difficulty. If I can't beat this guy in Insane, I definitely can't beat anyone else. Especially the true last boss. Sure, I'll lower the difficulty to just Expert. If I still can't handle it, then it's definitely a skill issue. I've done well so far playing an Insane, but I suppose in the end it just wasn't meant to be.
Pi to the pi to the pi to the pi equals an integer? What kind of clickbait is this? This video is sponsored by Jane Street. You might want a job, and they've definitely got some programs so you can find out more details at the end of the video. Before we go anywhere with this, we have to deal with the estimate in the room. And that is everyone thinking, why don't we just calculate what it is and check if it's an integer or not? And if that was your first thought, you are in very good company. When I saw this on Twitter last month, one of the first responses was from Tim Gowers, a very serious mathematician. We're talking a Fields Medal winning mathematician. You don't get more mathy than Tim Gowers. And their first thought was, let's just calculate it. So they realized you can't. And this thing, it's an emotional roller coaster from beginning to end, from why it's surprising, to why it shouldn't be surprising, to why we can't calculate it, to why we probably can work it out. Well, you know what? We're going to deal with all of those in order. This whole situation is surprising because pi is a transcendental number. To recap, you've got the integers. These are whole numbers, things like 1, 42, those ones. You've then got the rationals. They're anything that's a fraction. So a third, 5/7, negative a 12, anything like that. They're any numbers that can be written as a ratio. In fact, it's in the name. Rationals. It's got ratio in it. I know. Everyone remembers where they were the first time they noticed that. So the rationals actually include the integers, and these I consider the well-behaved numbers. You then have the irrationals, things like root 2. And root 2 is pretty much root 2. And they're just things that aren't rational. So you can't write them as a ratio, but you can write them as the solution to a nice, neat equation. And then you have the transcendental numbers, things like pi, e, the natural log of 2. Numbers which aren't rational, and you can't write them as the answer to a neat, finite equation. You have to use something like an infinite series, something ridiculous to get these numbers. These numbers are very poorly behaved, and they're very hard to get a grip on, which is why it's surprising that just by raising one of these, the powers of other transcendental numbers, you somehow get back to the most behaved. I mean, surely that's not going to happen. We're going to start one rung lower on the ridiculous number ladder and begin with irrational. Can we raise an irrational to the power of another irrational to get a rational answer out the other side? Well, let's imagine root 2 to the power of root 2.
There we go.
Good irrational number. Is that rational or irrational? Well, it turns out we don't actually have to know. Because imagine we take that whole answer and we raise it to the power of root 2, another irrational number. And the way we're doing it here, that means it's now root 2 to the power of root 2 times root 2, which gives us 2, and root 2 squared is 2. It's an integer. So there you are. At some point, by starting with an irrational number and raising it to the powers of other irrational numbers, we get a whole number out the other side. So it does work for irrational. Now we move on. Well, here's that decimal point. This is even more straightforward. E, transcendental, the power of the natural log of 2, transcendental, equals 2, an integer. I know. And before I put e and network of 2 upper transcendental numbers, don't want that an I, but you raise one to the power of the other, and you get an integer. Like, by definition, that's what the natural log is doing. Everyone suddenly startled. No, you can very easily raise a transcendental number to the power of another transcendental number and get an integer. What on earth is going wrong with pi to the pi, pi to the pi? Right. For simplicity's sake, how about we start by setting pi equal to 3? Hey! I did not invite a stock audio studio audience in here to boo me. Now cheer it up. Better. Maybe a little too far. Okay, so we set pi equal to 3, and now we can work our way through calculating what this is, except we're not doing the root 2 thing before.
What the heck?
We're kind of going from the bottom up. However,
This isn't what you were supposed to
there are no
do.
brackets or anything to indicate otherwise. If you've got a power tower, you actually work your way from the top down. At the very top, we have 3 to the power of 3, which is 27, 3 cubed. If we were
I can live with
using
this.
pi, pi to pi is 36.432 and some stuff. So it's definitely bigger than 3 to the 3, but in the bigger scheme of things, not substantially so. We've now got 3 to the power of 27, which is a number just over 7.6 trillion. It's a 13-digit number. And we could have done this with pi. Pi to the pi to the pi is pi to the 36.43, etc., which is a number just over 1.2 billion. A number with 19 digits. The numbers are getting pretty big. Well, I say big numbers. We ain't seen nothing yet, because the next step is 3 to the power of that 7.6 trillion number. And if we were to work that through, the answer we get, but this is not the answer we would get, that's how many digits would be in the answer. The answer would have over 3.6 trillion digits. If we do the same thing with pi, we know the answer would have almost a billion digits. It's getting insanely big. Why can't we just calculate that? Well, to put it into context, I thought I would look at the current world records for calculating digits of just pi. Regular, old pi. And in 2019, Emma set the world record at 31 trillion digits of pi. It was actually pi times 10 trillion digits. Amazing. And in 2020, Timothy pushed that out to 50 trillion digits. And it took Timothy 8 months of computing time to get 50 trillion digits. Emma was using Google computing resources, and that was only 121 days of calculation time. And we're talking tens of trillions here. The number of digits in pi to the pi to the pi to the pi, at least the whole number bit, that is in the billions of billions. That's about 1 million times more digits. Not 1 million times bigger, 1 million times more digits. We simply cannot compute all of that. And the fact that it's pi makes it even worse than that. Allow me to explain. Say what you want about 3, at least we know it exactly. It's equal to 3. And if you want to calculate 3 to the power of 27, that would start off easily enough, 9, 27, 81. However, the answers start to get very big very quickly. So to make our lives easy, we could decide to only care about the last 3 digits. Anything above that, we throw it away. So 3 to the 7, 2,187, that 2 is out of here. And importantly, we only have to multiply the bit that's left by 3 to get the next answer in the sequence. So we throw away any bit that's too big. Eventually we discover that 3 to the 27 ends in 987. We were able to throw away some details to simplify the calculation, but it means we don't get the whole answer on the other side, which is a problem here. We can only actually do that with the very last step. We need to know that entire 7 and a bit trillion number exactly, because we have to raise 3 to the power of that, but then we could do that simplification. That's why we know that the answer of 3 to the 3 to the 3 to the 3 ends 6100739387. And that record is an integer. The pi, however, it's even worse. We could do that trick for the digits when the number gets bigger and bigger.
It's only physical
going
damage.
to the left. However, pi has infinitely many digits going the other way, and we don't know pi exactly. We only know a finite number of digits, so we have to use an approximation. And if we used only the first 7 decimal places of pi to calculate pi to the pi, the answer we get only matches the true answer for the first 5 decimal places. We now know fewer decimal places accurately. And that's going to be a problem. And by the way, I'm putting aside the whole world of number crunching hurt due to the fact that we're raising something to a fractional value, so we're technically taking a root, and that is, there's a whole lot of computations under there I'm not even going to touch. I'm going to focus on the very last step of this hypothetical calculation. We've got pi to the power of over 1.3 billion. How accurate do we need to know pi to so we can do just enough of this calculation to check if the answer is an integer or not? Well,
but I think this is definitely doable in Expert, assuming he doesn't start with that attack all the time in Expert.
Pi compared to, if you raise it to different powers, how many decimal places in the answer match the true value. So for example, you take the first 5 decimal places of pi, raise it to the power of 6, only 2 of the places in the answer are correct. Now this is a bit off track, but I did this until I ran out of precision in Python. I then did some rough approximations using Wolfram Alpha until I hit the precision limits there. I did a plot of the number of digits in your approximation of pi compared to if you raise it to a certain power, there are no correct decimal places in the answer. And this is going to be one of the loosest pseudo conjectures ever. It seems from my very small, inaccurate results that it's about twice the number of digits. If you raise a truncation of pi to a power which is twice the number of digits in your approximation, you will get no correct decimal places in the answer. And I stopped there. I didn't compute any more with more precision. I didn't look at it theoretically. It was becoming a distraction. And for the record, people are going to try more values and they're going to send in critiques of my terrible conjecture. So, you know what? Send them to MatPlus Puzzles. I can't promise we'll get a chance to go through them. But if we do and there's something interesting in there, I'll do a follow-up video. But no promises. The point is, you need to know a lot of decimal places of pi if you want to get a sufficiently accurate result, particularly if the power you're looking at is 1.3 billion, and we currently only know pi into the tens of trillions. That is a big difference. In short, there's no way we can calculate this in the conceivable future. However, there might be a workaround. Surely we could just prove mathematically that in theory, pi to the pi to pi to the pi cannot equal an integer. Sadly, we can't do that. We don't have the mathematical tools. There's a lot we don't know about transcendental numbers. So while we know pi is transcendental and e is transcendental, we don't know if pi plus e is transcendental or not. We don't know if pi times e is transcendental or not. In fact, we don't even know if pi to the power of pi is transcendental, even though we can calculate that one. So we know it's not a whole number. We don't know if it's transcendental. There's a lot we don't know, and there is one glimmer of hope. We have Chanuel's conjecture, which says things about when you combine numbers if you get a transcendental number or not. However, it is complex, literally, and it involves crazy things like field extensions, and I'll put a link to it in the description below if you want to have a closer look at it. The bad news is, it came up in the 1960s, and now, over half a century later, the general consensus is we're still nowhere near being able to prove it. We're way off knowing if Chanuel's conjecture is true or not. So it turns out, humankind, we either have to get a lot better at mathematics.
Hello there, folks from Armor Road. If I could have a moment, there's something I'd like to ask. I don't know how to pronounce that name. My name is Whale. I'm a dragon hunter. Come to Armor Road on the advice of the Holy Dragon Elder. Do you know much about dragons? They've lived since the time of the gods. They're the embodiment of human fears and terrors. My family have hunted these dragons for generations. We're a long line of dragon slayers. So one day, I heard a strange voice echoing in my head. It said the three most powerful dragons had resurrected in this ocean city. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Where was I? Oh yes! You wouldn't happen to know where the ice dragon in this stratum is, do you? Alright. Sorry to bother you then. Looks like I'll just have to keep hunting. Thanks.
Prove Daniel's conjecture, or we need to get a lot better at computing. Until then, we have no idea if multiply is an integer or not. The only thing we can say about it, absolute certainty, that the whole situation is just a bit irrational. Hey! Don't make me send you back for a refund. This video was brought to you by James Street, the principal sponsor of the Stand Up Maths channel. I think they're great to help make this whole channel possible. If you're considering a job or indeed career that involves solving complex mathematical problems in the financial world, James Street have an incredible range of programs so you can find out more. If you're a first or second year university undergraduate, you can go to the SEED program. Actually, for first year, you can also do the first year trading and technology program. They've got the Insight and In Focus programs because Jane Street are always striving to make their programs as accessible as possible. They've got internships, there's Focus, there's WISE, I've mentioned before, the Jane Street Symposium, so many options. These programs are hosted by the London...
Wait, I'm sure you've heard, but you mustn't go in there. A dragon is wreaking havoc up ahead. The other day, the swordsman Lindworm pursued the rumor and ended up being hauled up to the inn. If you come to chance a dragon, I can't stop you, but I do recommend you stop by the inn first and talk to Lindworm before committing to this. Welcome back, boss. Oh hey, did you hear the rumor about the dragons? We keep getting guests here who come to our world to chase after that rumor. It's keeping me busy. Huh? That's what you came to talk to Mr. Lindworm about? Oh, Keys. He's probably well enough to have visitors by now. Follow me, okay? I'm Lindworm. Swordsman from the Western Nation, ordered here by my king to vanquish the Golden Dragon. Princesses in our nation tend to be soothsayers. My liege, Princess Margaret, is no exception. Recently, the princess's oracular guidance, apparently from a divine source, was to defeat a dragon. The princess has been haunted each night with visions of a Golden Dragon. This trait is showing. Hence, I was ordered to vanquish this Golden Dragon and end her nightmares. But I have failed. Your Gildurii, as I am told, is the strongest in all of Armroad. Thus do I beseech you. Though we have only met, I have no choice. I am bedridden, and my princess grows only weaker. Bluntly, I must ask you to go and defeat the Golden Dragon in my stead. Sure. Thank you, warriors. I admire your courage and kindness. The princess entrusted me with this dragon bell. Take it, and use it to call forth the Golden Dragon. I speak from experience when I say this, but the Golden Dragon is stronger than you may believe. Be careful. Now, what about... I guess I'm doing the Blue Dragon last. I'll mull over whether or not I should beat the dragons and how I'll do it if I do decide to do. For now, I'm done.